Three seats, 3 you.
Yeah. Hey, Steve, come down. Yeah, that track right there, that track is fire. It's called Roots, Beans, and Greens. It's on that new produce section. Yo, welcome to the Brown Suga Youth Festival. Word up. This is our 9th year. Been doing this for 9 years.
Yeah.
And it is beautiful. It's always been beautiful, and seeing all these beautiful people, beautiful young folks. It's always been an intergenerational dialogue between holistic health and hip hop, brought to you by the Going Green, Living Bling. And I want to first acknowledge, all the ancestors and elders and young people and children to come. And I just want to say fresh and thank you for being here. And at the same time, I want to thank all of our sponsors. And outside, you can actually see who they are. There's so many of them, so many beautiful, great names who help contribute to this, beautiful event. One of our main sponsors is Peace Jam, and they, of course, take care of the accommodations for all of our artists out. So I just want to say thank you and blessings to them and the work that they're doing. And at the same time, I want to acknowledge, my co-producer for this festival, and I'm going to invite her up to introduce herself. My name is Etef Vida, also known as DJ K from Libation. I'm the founder of the Brown Suga Youth Fest. I started it in high school, and it just kind of turned into be something more than what I thought it would be, which is I wanted to have a dialogue around holistic health and alternative resources and remedies, through hip hop culture, which is higher inner peace, helping other people. Well, as my man Jeff Campbell would say, the intelligent movement. So I want to acknowledge that. We are all because they were, and they were because they was, and so it is. And, as we go into this, we'll bring up Nyambe. Y'all put your hands together because we're going to have to
Thank everyone for being here. I apologize for us running behind. This is beautiful Ava Luna I have with me, and this is the daughter of the woman who's getting ready to grace the stage for you and share some of her wisdom and knowledge and experience in life. I also want to remind everyone that right now, after she gets done speaking, there will be a film by a local filmmaker, Lori Joyce. She's in the audience. Have her raise her hands up. She's in the second row here. And it's called Arise. So we're kind of doing a little bit on some women here, some feminism. So I hope that you go along for the ride. I also want to remind everyone that we have some other things going on simultaneously. One is at the school that I teach at part-time called Tubman Hilliard Global Academy, which is right down the block. It's a science fair, a K-5 science fair. And then we also have Sankofa Wellness that has a health sampler at Brother Jeff's Cultural Center, which is also just right down the block. So there you can get some free massage, some free reflexology, iridology. Yeah. So if you have some time after the film, maybe go down and check it out. And we'll be having a dinner later, cooking workshop. So yeah, we couldn't have done this without all of our wonderful sponsors, the people you see here, our volunteers. Just thank you so much, community. We always feel so blessed when people just come out and support. And thank you for our guests who come into town. Yes, we got Doodlebug from Diggable Planets in the building, sitting back in the back, being real low-key. We also have Ashell Seasons, another environmentally friendly activist, hip-hop artist from Oakland, California, who's here as well. So right now I'd like to bring to the stage, her name is A. Breezy Harper. You're going to introduce her? Yeah. Okay. We'll have Ashara Kunaka introduce A. Breezy Harper. Thank you so much for being here. Love you, love you, love you.
So y'all are good. We are always so happy and blessed to be at Crossroads Theater. Because it is a sacred place and sits in a sacred place. So for those of you who understand the sacred geometric energy of a 5 point, that we are in a place that has held a lot of creative energy, and that indeed we are here because our ancestors paved the way for us to be here. So before I introduce Breeze, I'm going to pour libation. And that's really the pouring of water or liquid from one vessel into another. Often it is the pouring of water, sometimes of gin, sometimes of ghee. It's been of many things. I'm going to pour water. And really we're just activating the cycle of receptivity and the energy of femininity, that all creative things that are manifested outside start inside in a feminine place. Okay? And so for those of you who've never seen, maybe raise your hand if you're not familiar with the practice of pouring libation. There's a couple of people who are, raise your hand high if you have no idea what I'm talking about. Great, that's cool. So it's something that we've been doing at the Brown Suga Fest. And it's also something that happens in a lot of traditional indigenous communities at cultural events. And I just want to call the name of Opalanga Pugh, who really brought this practice into commonplace in the Denver creative arts scene. And she transitioned her body some years ago, but was really one of the co-founders of the Kwanzaa movement here, and was an amazing griot storyteller, and poured libation at every event. And so we're going to pour a little bit of water, and at each interval, you can agree that this is a good statement and that this is a good thing by saying ashe, or saying amen, or saying word, or whatever it is that you say that, like, I agree with you. And so we keep it really simple because people get confused sometimes and think it's connected to a particular religion, but it's really connected to our interdependence to the earth, and that everything on this planet is made up of this and needs this to survive, yes? So we pour a little bit out for those who have come before us, for those who paved the way for our grandmothers and grandfathers, for all the angels and all the Orisha, all of the indigenous energies that come, and we give thanks for them today. Ashe. We pour a little bit out for those who are living now, for those who are doing this work, writing, reading, moving, teaching, who are understanding right now that we are indeed the ones we have been waiting for. Ashe. We pour a little bit more water out for those who are coming, waiting in the wings, and we honor the firstborn and the lastborn, those who are still sitting in the water, breathing through it and listening, coming for us. We pour some for them, Ashe. And then the last bit of water we pour, and we call out the names of those ancestors who have done the work. I'm calling my grandmother, Charles Washington, who lived here. You all call the names of anyone else. Marcus Garvey, Ashe. Malcolm X, Ashe. We've already called Opalanga Pugh. Gil Scott Heron, we call his name today. Ashe. We call the names. Y'all? I can't hear you. Langston Hughes is being called today. James Baldwin is being called today. Call it out so we can hear it. So we honor all of those who have come before us, knowing that we cannot be at the Brown Suga Fest or at the Crossroads Theater without honoring those who crossed over, yeah? So, thank you for joining us, ancestors, and we do this that you may be pleased. Ashe. So what's going to happen with that water is that I'm actually going to take it outside and water the tree that lives out front. And again, this is about recycling, yes, redoing, remembering, re-honoring, restructuring, and regeneration. So with that, my sister friend, who's a PhD candidate, activist, and author, known as Sister Vegan, I call her Breeze Harper. I actually like to call her Dr. Harper, even though she always corrects me on that. Lives in Berkeley, California. She has inspired the voice of women by approaching the conversation on food justice and what it means to be a Black woman, a feminist, a womanist, and dealing with racial equality. It's really quite amazing. I found her online many years ago. I found her blog, Sister Vegan. I said, well, who's having a conversation on Black women and veganism? Why is there a conversation on that? And I know last year we gave away several copies of her book. And so to be able to come full circle and be able to listen to her and her continued struggle, her continued inquiry into how it shows up when we're talking about food justice, when we're talking about social justice, injustice, and community building, movement building indeed. I am so pleased to have my sister come and join me from the East Bay. Y'all make some noise for Amy Breeze Harper.
First, I want to thank ETEF and NAMBE for inviting me to come this year. It's just really a true sense of solidarity, and what they did was they helped me bring my family out here, which is very important for me. I breastfeed on demand. I have an 8-month-old that NAMBE was holding, so I really appreciate that, really understanding food justice as nursing on demand as well. So I think that's not really supported enough in this culture, so thank you. So I just wanted to give you a little background. I am the creator of the Sister Vegan Project. For those of you who don't know, I started about 6 years ago. When I was in Boston, I decided to transition to veganism because I had been diagnosed with a fibroid tumor, and I had decided not to go the allopathic route, but to investigate ways in which women have been healing themselves, specifically women of African descent before colonialism. And I'd run across a coworker who had had fibroid tumors, a woman of African descent, and she'd given me a book suggestion, Queen Afua's Sacred Woman. And Queen Afua proposes that women who have fibroid tumors, who have a disharmony of the womb health, should go back to a diet that was not really seen after colonialism. So she's looking at southern Kemetic Egypt, she's looking at raw foods and veganism. So I gave this particular diet a try, and I shrank my fibroid tumors by 75% within the first year. And about 1.5 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, when I was pregnant with my second daughter, and I had had a sonogram, I asked about the tumors, and the technician couldn't even see them. So that's basically 7 years later. But I had gotten interested in veganism when I had initially shrank the tumors, because I had noticed in Boston I'd never encountered any black vegans, and I was interested. And simultaneously, I was interested in looking at black women's lives. I was in graduate school looking at how I can fuse educational technologies as a way to empower black females. I did my Harvard degree in 2007 in educational technologies. So the Sister Vegan Project kind of came about with that context, and I did a call for papers asking for voices. Are there women of color who practice veganism? And I know collectively, if you read the works of Audre Lorde and Patricia Hill Collins, they agree, I agree, that black women in this country, collectively, we do experience racism and sexism, and that gives us a different relationship with our bodies and health than the mainstream. So I did a call for papers, and those voices can be read in the Sister Vegan Project. So that's basically a quick brief of what I do and what I do on the Sister Vegan Project. But tonight, this afternoon, I want to talk more about food justice and healing. I'm a PhD candidate, but I don't want to be too high and theoretical. I don't really want to talk about my dissertation. So I'm going to start off with talking about Angela Davis. I know there are some young people in the crowd who may not know who she is, but she's a powerful social justice leader in this country, very active for the last 35, 40 years. Started off, let's see, I don't know if you watched the Black Power mixtape, but that's probably the best way I can introduce you to her. She was basically a proponent for anti-racist activism, and she became a professor after actually being exonerated from the charges that were put against her for supposedly conspiring to get someone out of jail using gun violence. And she's a history of consciousness professor at Santa Cruz, and she came to speak at my school at University of California, Davis. I don't know if you're familiar with Davis, but we made the news because some of the students and faculty members were pepper sprayed by the police during peaceful protests. So in February of 2012, I attended a special event at University of the Pacific in Stockton, California, and in the same month I attended the social justice teach-in with Professor Angela Davis. So Angela Davis gave the keynote talk. And long story short, she was asked to talk about how we can move forward since the pepper spraying of the UC Davis students and faculty. While listening to Davis, I was reminded how brilliant she is in understanding the concept of solidarity. She spoke about how we can't understand the violence of the pepper spray incident without understanding how it is a symptom of structural violence at large. We live in a culture in which violence is normalized, and the Occupy movement seeks to make this violence visible. And in her message, she made it clear that we cannot achieve a safe and healthy environment, whether it be at Davis or 2,000 miles away, if we in the USA don't understand that Occupy has to go beyond socioeconomic class, i.e. 99% versus the 1%. It must be anti-racist, feminist, not transphobic, eco-sustainable, not homophobic, not ageist, anti-sexist, anti-capitalist, and anti-ableist. And unlike most activists who have spoken in favor of the Occupy movement here in the USA, Angela Davis proposed that human beings must take non-human animals into consideration if Occupy is to be truly successful. At the end of her talk, the audience members were allowed to ask Davis questions, so I asked her to elaborate on what she meant by non-human animals and their role in ending suffering and oppression. And my husband video recorded this, and then I have a transcript, excerpt from her response to me. Quote, she said, "It seems to me that not knowing how to recognize that the food we eat masks so much cruelty, the fact that we could sit down and eat a piece of chicken without thinking about the horrendous conditions under which chickens are industrially bred in this country is a sign of the dangers of capitalism. How capitalism has colonized our minds, the fact that we look no further than the commodity itself, the fact that we refuse to understand the relationships that underlie the commodities that we use on a daily basis," end quote. And I found this so profound, such a profound answer to me. And I was thinking not just about chickens as a commodity, and I wasn't just thinking about food, but in general, how have our minds been colonized in this culture? And then my work focuses on looking at how to decolonize the body through health and food activism. So I'm just keeping that in the back of my mind, keep that in the back of your mind. And simultaneously, I'd also gone to see India Aries speak at the University of Pacific in Stockton for Black History Month. And she decided to do a keynote talk in a songversation, so it's song and conversation. And just seeing these two women speak that month, I decided I kind of wanted to give a keynote talk that fuses those ideas together, and I would like to sing and talk about these ideas and kind of narrate 5 or 7 of the top things that I've learned, that I've observed during my 6 or 7 year tenure on the Sister Vegan Project in terms of food and health, and kind of keeping in mind this concept of what are the signs, the dangers of our minds being colonized by capitalism, and the dangers of not looking past particular commodities, and how they not just create cruelty to non-human animals, but just cruelty on our own bodies, our own health, our own communities. I'm not very good with memory, so I actually wrote down most of the lyrics. I usually make up lyrics if I don't have them written down. So I'm going to start by singing and then talking, singing and talking. You know the deal, right? We will not bow down to racism. We will not bow down to injustice. Oh, we will not bow down to exploitation. I'm gonna stand. I'm gonna stand. The things that I wish I had been taught as a youth was to basically stand up in the face of social injustice. I grew up in an all-white rural New England town, one of like 3 black kids in the entire school system. And I remember always encountering racism, anti-black racism, what could be considered, I guess, white supremacy during that time in the 1980s, and this tremendous amount of physical stress and emotional stress. No one ever taught me how to deal with these things in a healthy way. And of course, these stresses and these traumas of being bullied go beyond racist and sexist bullying, but I'm just going to talk about those particular social injustices that I received. I grew up in a way that is atypical in America for a woman of African descent. I actually grew up in a rural area. My parents had taken out a mortgage on a house, 2 acres of land, and my father believes in edible landscaping, which means if I can't eat it, I don't grow it. Doesn't believe in lawns because he can't eat it. And I had what I needed to eat healthy. He taught me the basics. But at the same time, I was always encountering particular types of racist situations that made me not reach for healthy foods to deal with those physical stresses. No one ever told me the first day of 7th grade when that kid called me the N-word, I didn't know who it was, don't grab for that whole pack of Smarties and overdose on it. Go and grab some type of food that can help you with that physical stress. No one taught me how to stand up to racism in a way that was healthy through food and health. So I'm speaking to people I guess who are considered youths in this audience, and that's what I wish someone had told me. Because I realized that those particular ways of dealing with stress caused me probably those fibroid tumors, which I'll talk about later, and other things like insomnia and anxiety. So I wish I had had that particular food, that particular knowledge to deal with such racist trauma. But also food goes beyond what we actually put in our mouths, but I wish, until I got into college, I didn't know this, that there was a whole canon of black feminist scholars who were already writing about what I was dealing with. So I wish that someone had told me that I had access to that. So I didn't have access to the internet. The internet didn't, I don't think it existed then. I'm not that old. I'm pretty old, but 36. But I think it was just coming on the scene when I was graduating from high school. So if you have access to the internet, you kind of have, at your fingertips a way to type in these concepts. Someone's bullying me at school, I feel horrible about my health, I'm reaching for these particular foods, what's going on. So one of the things that I want to offer for the youth of today is, think about what Angela Davis says, how our minds have been colonized by capitalism. And why is it no one, if that's happening now in your school system, someone's bullying you or not bullying you, and you're having access to Smarties, candies, and gummy bears, why is it no one is really teaching you, if they haven't yet, that that particular thing you're reaching for is a sign of capitalism, it's a commodity, and we actually look no further than the vending machine where it comes from to trace that line of exploitation and cruelty. The cruelty that it causes to our own bodies, but also when we look at where that sugar candy came from. So Angela Davis, I'm thinking about her in the background of my head as I do this talk, and how so many of these products are saturated with sugar. And sugar has been proven time and time again that it causes, attention deficit disorder, it causes anxiety, insomnia, it puts your entire flora out of whack, so that's the intestinal flora. And why is it that no one told me that I'm not supposed to reach for those things? And furthermore, why is it no one told me that much of the sugar that's in that comes from slavery? Slavery didn't end with the Emancipation Proclamation. Slavery still exists. So I'm thinking in my head, why is it no one taught me to think further than that particular commodity? So I'm asking the youth today to kind of start thinking about how capitalism has capitalism colonized our minds in a way where we don't even recognize it when we go out and start doing particular types of social justice, even food and health justice. So these are the things that I observed that I want to share with you. Next song. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones, and as DJ Coven Motivation would say, I'm not a liberator. People liberate themselves. So I wish someone would have told me that I shouldn't always be waiting for someone to lead me into my own transformation. That it's, I'm the one I've been waiting for. I just need the self-esteem, the motivation, the encouragement to know that when these social injustices are happening to me or my community, I don't need to just wait and sit and wait for some grand leader to appear, that I am that grand leader. We all have that in ourselves. And it would have been nice to have learned that sooner than later, but it's great that I learned it, in my mid-20s. And I'm going to go back to me being introduced to Queen Afu's work in The Sacred Woman and why I entered veganism. I said I was diagnosed with a fibroid tumor, so for those of you who may not know that, it's something that happens to the uterus. It's a benign tumor. Excuse me. Women of African descent have fibroid tumors in their wombs occurring 3 to 5 times more than the average female population. And there's a lot to be said about that. I know environmental racism, environmental toxins in food, and genetics play a big role in that, but I focus more on the food and health aspect of understanding this ailment. And instead of relying on the biopharmaceuticals, who really aren't interested in making our suffering go away by prevention, but kind of commodifying our suffering and turning it into an advantage for them, an opportunity to make money, I learned that I could actually cure my womb health through particular things that had been constructed as weeds or things that were irrelevant in my environment. I'll give you an example. Queen Afu talks about different types of herbs that women can eat to put their womb health back into harmony. And by the way, this isn't just for fibroid tumors. For most of you young women who have started menstruation, it's not normal to bleed heavy for 7 to 10 days and be in so much pain you can't even go to school. Okay? So Queen Afua talks to you about things that have been constructed in America, seen as weeds, are actually healing medicinals for your womb. So if you've ever heard of things like nettles, dandelion, burdock, they're considered weeds by most people in America. People get annoyed with them, so they take them out of their lawn, usually using something that's a chemical that is probably carcinogenic to kill all those weeds and have a nice lawn to look at that doesn't offer any type of healing. So with Queen Afua's book, I took my own health into my own hands, and I became the liberator of my womb. So what I did was, I became open to the possibility that I could actually cure myself, not with a gynecologist, but with changing my diet. And I'm saying not everyone has to be vegan, but it did help, a whole foods vegan diet. And looking at what I'd always thought were weeds. My mind had been colonized to think, not even think about how dandelion white exists. Why is it even called a weed? And just grab for Midol, grab for ibuprofen, grab for the things that no one ever told me if I take too much of it, it's going to destroy your kidneys and liver. If you keep on taking these over-the-counter prescription painkillers, you have to keep on taking more and more because the same dose that you took last year, it's not going to work 6 months, 12 months later. Your body gets used to it, so you have to take more. It's more taxing on my kidneys, my liver. No one told me that because we live in a capitalist consumer society in which our suffering and our pain has been commodified by the biopharms. They don't want you to know that you can get dandelion, a pound of dried dandelion for like $8 organic that will last you 4 months. They prefer that you go out and spend $15 on ibuprofen or Midol, which will never ever actually teach you to think more deeply about why you're even bleeding so heavy, why you have so much pain, why you have ovarian cysts or fibroid tumors. So it was hard, it was a difficult transformation, but it was not impossible. It's not impossible to liberate yourself from these chains of, I'd say, neo-colonialism at this point. These chains of capitalism that you're you're kind of even born into as a child. You know, we're so marketed to even as children. I was, my son, we don't have a TV, but we're in a hotel right now. And I let my son watch TV briefly so I could get ready. He's 3. And it was the Cartoon Network, and I realized I hadn't watched cartoons in so long. It's like 2 minutes of cartoons and 10 minutes of corporate capitalist kitchen, as Queen Afua would say. You know, just marketing to these children sugar, masquerading as food, or as she and Supernova Sloan, her son, would say, drugs masquerading as food and sugar crack. It was just so scary to me to realize that. It starts so young, just colonizing our brains. You know, we're seen as disposable. We're seen as opportunities. You know, toddlers watching cartoons, seen as these opportunities to start indoctrinating them now that, you know, you actually think that particular things are weeds, you think particular things are not worth their time, your time. And then you reach for the things that will perpetually make you sick. And you never realize that until maybe someone later in life, sooner in life, exposes you to these lies. And Queen Afua exposed me to these lies. I wasn't 3. Fortunately, I can tell my toddler that's poison, you're gonna get sick if you eat that. But you know, it took until I was 25 to encounter Queen Afua and other people who had been writing about decolonizing our bodies. So decolonizing, what I mean by that is, if you understand colonialism, you know, 500 years ago, the colonization, which the violence that was done to the land, to human beings, the genocide of Native Americans, chattel slavery. Decolonization is in resistance to colonialism. So when I say to decolonize our minds, to decolonize our bodies, I'm talking about, okay, this happened 400 and 500 years ago, but now you see the effects today. You see it as racism and sexism. You see it as environmental racism, nutritional racism. You see it as advertisers actually specifically targeting low-income communities of color more with junk food and sugar crack than you'll see white middle-class suburbia. That's what I mean when I'm saying I want to decolonize my mind and my body. So not from necessarily something that happened 500 years ago, static, didn't affect me today, it's all affecting us. And I wish someone had told me that, you know, this is what it takes to take control of your body. So Queen Afua, what she did for me, and most of the women that are involved in the Sister Vegan Project who've, I say a significant number of women have actually became vegan or vegetarian because of the message that Sacred Woman had given to us. It just basically opened our eyes to what both Angela Davis talks about and Queen Afua, you know, how our minds have been commodified and colonized by capitalism. Queen Afua refers to all these junk and processed foods as the corporate capitalist kitchen. So I think it would have been so great, I'm telling the youth now, think about what it means to be your own leader. That you're the one that you've been looking for, waiting for. If you're suffering from particular nutritional related illnesses, and I know that it's not 100%, food is not the only answer. I do focus on food and herbs. I know there are other factors, but in terms of food, I think that's the last thing so many of us think about. Ask yourself what do you do? What do you put in your body? Are you taking a journal? Are you making the connection? Like when I was younger and I had gone to college and I had been in high school and I just kept on encountering so much of the sexism and the racism. And I kept on eating these foods that it didn't even occur to me I was even doing it. That I was reaching for foods that was causing me insomnia that probably eventually led to me having these fibroid tumors. Think about it. I turn my Kindle on. Next song. Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? Would you harbor a Christian among fugitive or a slave? Would you harbor a Haitian, Korean, or Czech, a lesbian or a gay? Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? So growing up, I keep on going back to childhood. I realize a lot of my personality has been influenced by what has been unresolved in my childhood. And I'm seeing this more as a mother to a 8-month-old and a 3-year-old. And I'm more mindful of how they're growing up and hoping that they have access to the resources they need to be as healthy as they can as adults in terms of their mental and their spiritual and their physical levels. When I was in college, I didn't understand completely this concept of solidarity, which is, I think, what this song is about that I just sung to you, which I first encountered in 1996, Sweet Honey in the Rock. I was at Dartmouth College. I had never even encountered a cappella this way, social justice fused with singing, with old gospel spirituals. It just took me to another level that I never truly understood the messages that I had been listening to, reading about. And my women and gender studies courses, reading about Audre Lorde, Patricia Hill Collins, Bell Hooks. Something about listening to Sweet Honey in the Rock, they're like that black feminist canon come alive through verse and lyric and soul and spirit. And when I had first heard this song in 1996, I don't know, it just all came together where I realized, wait, what am I doing with my understanding of social justice? Am I only focused on one demographic, my own community? What does it mean for me to harbor others who are not necessarily part of my community? What does it mean for me to extend compassion and love to those that I originally thought were my enemies, or people that I thought were not deserving of my love and my compassion? So I have been thinking about this, and I've been ruminating over this for a very long time, and focusing the answers in the food and health activism work that I do. For a very, very long time, I never acknowledged, in terms of would you harbor me, non-human animals. I never acknowledged people who I thought were not necessarily part of my community and were there to basically give my life hell. I didn't acknowledge anyone. When I say community, I'm thinking more or less on low-income people and people of color. So I didn't understand solidarity. I didn't understand, does my social justice connect to or at least help support other oppressed people and or animals? So for those of you who are new to veganism, this concept of veganism, I know it's very broad and people practice veganism for many different reasons. My transition into veganism was first in part because I was unaware of what the foods were doing to my body that I was reaching for, usually during times of great stress caused by, I was talking about sexism, racism, very traumatic experiences. I also never ever really thought about extending my circle of compassion and harboring to non-human animals. So veganism, my particular practice of veganism is not just about health, but I also see it as a way to alleviate suffering and pain of most non-human animals that I come in contact with, or could potentially come in contact with as a consumer in the store where I could buy a chicken product. So how do I harbor entities in a way that influence social justice positively and we don't forget about all the other beings that are being oppressed? It's a really, really, really broad question, and I don't have the answer for that. But I do know, in part, veganism, the black feminism that I've been engaged with, fusing those together has really helped me understand this concept of harboring, taking responsibility for my health, for the earth, for my community, kind of, taking responsibility. Am I the one I've been waiting for? Yes, I'm my own leader, but now how can I help those other beings or be in solidarity with those other beings? So I want to go back to veganism, and I usually speak to audiences that are brown and black people, and collectively we're not usually interested in veganism from the mainstream point of view, which for the most part it's introduced to us through animal rights first, and no one's really looking at how veganism or a whole foods plant-based diet could actually be part of the solution to racialized health disparities. When I say racialized health disparities, for those of you who are not knowledgeable of this term, brown and black, red people, indigenous people in this country suffer from nutritional health-related diseases far higher than white middle-class America, and there's a reason for that. I'm not going to get into it too much, but it does have to do with, once again, legacies of colonialism and racism and who gets access to what, depending on your color and your class, usually color in this country. And eventually you see that there are patterns, racialized patterns, where you see people who are non-white racialized minorities having health problems, access to crappy, toxic foods in a way that you just don't see white middle-class suburbia. So whenever I first saw veganism, before I even was introduced to Queen Afua approaches veganism in a way that resonates with the realities of most brown and black people. She starts with, we have been collectively traumatized physically, emotionally, and spiritually by the legacies of colonialism and adaptive capitalism. And it's destroyed our communities and health. And then she offers a Southern Egyptian Kemetic vegan way of healing. And she's one of many people who have this Afrocentric approach. She doesn't really look too much at the animal rights component, and that's the kind of part that I wanted to bring in with my talk. Veganism is about compassion to yourself and to other beings. And I want to bring up colonialism and chattel slavery and how I actually began to see the connections of why I should also start caring about, what Angela Davis is talking about, how we think no further than the chicken on our plate of where it's come from and the cruelty. So let me just take you back about 150, 200 years ago. From, I guess, the time of 1820, 30s. African American or black women who were chattel slaves, they didn't have any rights, they were property. And there was a doctor by the name of Marion Sims who experimented on these women. And I'm going to keep it not too graphic because I know there's younger people in the audience. But he was experimenting on them to develop things like the speculum. And he did this, I would consider it vivisection on human beings. Like, that term is usually used for non-human animals, but these black women, about 30 of them, without anesthesia, he would use a scalpel down there. And he would try to do things, figure out ways to invent a speculum and to help cure the problems of his clients, which were white middle-class women. And these women were basically disposable. And a lot of the women on the Sister Vegan Project are looking at food and health in a way that just kind of goes beyond the mainstream conversation of food and health, which to me sometimes seems a little self-centered, where it's just about me healing myself or losing weight, and I don't really care about what it takes to get there. We're looking at it, like I said, would you harbor me? Solidarity. Is there a reverb?
A little bit.
A little bit, okay.
Just started.
Hello? Should I be closer? Try to fix, I don't know if it's my position. Is it hard to hear? No, okay. So let me get back on track. So a lot of us, we entered veganism. Is it that? Okay. Queen Afua helped a lot of us enter veganism. But then a lot of us started seeing similar and scary patterns that a lot of black female slaves, or black slaves in general, but particularly black women, encountered. And I thought about this Dr. Marion Sims, who's actually considered the father of gynecology, and how black females were commodities. How the people who treated our ancestors didn't think past the commodity. This human being has been commodified. Didn't think about or care about the amount of cruelty and suffering that brought this commodity to them. If I'm being too abstract, I apologize. I've been trying to downgrade my dissertation work. And if you have questions at the end, feel free to ask me, and I also am available via email. But we began thinking about these things and how it's just scary to understand what it means, chickens, cows being used for food. So let me give you a story. Black women, yes, they were commodities, but I'm not sure if you knew that they were actually used to nurse the slave master's children. They were expected many times to nurse the slave master's children before they even took care of their own babies, if they even had the right to have those babies with them. Many times these women would just give birth and their babies would be sold, taken away. And I just want you to think about the amount of suffering and pain. Like, I'm thinking about this as a mother to an 8-month-old and a 3-year-old. Like, it's just really resonating with me. If someone were to just come and take my children away from me. Okay. And I know this is veganism may be